Hello everyone, it's Amy and welcome back for week 41 of the new Build Your Stash and Craft. Today we are going to make border stamps, and so we are going to need some of our fun foam that we have in our stash and our leftover bits of foam core board, and we're going to use these to make some border stamps, which are really nice to like get yourself some borders stamped out and have them early. We will also need some of our paint. We will need our paint pad, which is the pad that we bought with the foam in the middle and the little bit of terry on the outside. This has already been, I got it wet and then I squeezed it out really tight so it's a little bit damp. And a credit card or something to spread it with, and some paper. So that's what we're going to need. So the first thing we're going to do, I have some made already because they take a little while, and this is a nice project if you want something to do and you just want to spend some time, because it does take time to doodle out your border stamps and that type of thing. So what I have done is I measured out a piece that is 11 inches long and a piece that is, well, as far as I know, 8.5 inches long. Well, the sticker's in my way. Let's get the sticker out of there so that we can actually see the numbers. There we go. Oops, sorry about bumping you. Okay, so this is about 8.5 inches long. I think it's 1/16 of an inch longer, which works okay, so you don't have to line it up exactly on your edges. And then this is just another extra piece, but we'll just start out with, you can make them any size. A border stamp is normally around an inch, anywhere from 1/4 of an inch to 1.5 inches thick. And so this one, I think, is 2 inches. Yep, just about 2 inches. And I did that on purpose because I want to do a very plain one so that we can move along and actually work, use them. So what I did was I did this one 2 inches thick because there is one border that I really like, and that is just a background border that I can then doodle on. And so what we're going to do is I'm just going to take my foam board, and this may not be exactly I'm kind of looking at it and it looks like it may be a little bit wider at one end than the other, and that's not going to make a big difference. So I'm just going to trace around that and cut off our piece of foam board. I am working in a different area right now. The basement underneath of my art studio, our water heater broke and it sooted the whole basement and everything in it. So I've not had, and it happened a while ago this summer, and when I was at my insurance agent this last week ago, I think, or 2 weeks ago, I don't know now, I asked them if it was covered, and they said it was, and then it was a mad rush to kind of get things ready for them to come in. So I'm just going to, I like to do this. I'm just going to make, well, maybe I've got some wavy ones. Maybe I'll make a pointy one. I like 2 different types of the corner or the border stamps. I'm going to make, and I'll do it with a regular pen. A lot of times this pen doesn't have any ink in it, but you're not going to be able to see what I'm doing. It just presses down the foam board, which is what we're doing to make our stamp. Wherever you press it down, it will show up white when you stamp it. So see how that just pressed that in like that? I'll do it with a regular pen so that you can see it. But whenever I run out, I put some tape on. Whenever I run out of ink in a pen, then I use those to make my foam stamps so that I don't get any of the ink transferred onto the project I'm working on. Because sometimes, because you're really pressing and going back and forth, you get a lot of ink in there, and that ink can come off on your paper. So if you have something that you can press it with that's not going to put ink on there, that would be good. But this way you'll be able to see it better. I'm going to make the bottom section smaller than the top section. And so that way I will have 2 border stamps when I stamp this. I will have 2 border stamps at the same time because I will cut along this line, and so I'll have a wide one, and I will have, or not border stamps, I'll have 2 borders because I'm going to put this on the same backing as one stamp. And now a lot of times I might draw a line here so that I actually get them straight. Sometimes I just do them like this because I just want them to be very natural looking. And so you just go ahead and you do your doodle all the way from one end to the other. So, but yeah, so I had to, they have to clean out my vents in the art room, which is above the basement. And so I had to move a lot of things in my art room. Like I had to move a lot of the furniture and that type of thing in my art room to get it out of the way so they could get to the vents. And so I have been very busy doing that. And so for a few weeks, I'm going to have to film out here in my dining room. So the shadows might be a little bit, you know, we might have a little bit more shadow. And we may have a little bit more dog noise because they're out here. But we'll just, you know, do the best that we can and deal with the things that are going on. So we'll just, looks like maybe we've got one more here. And there we go. Now, I could cut these apart and make 2 totally separate stamps, but I'm going to put them on here. I'm going to glue it on here. Oh, we also need our glue. And that way, every time I stamp it, I will have 2 borders on whatever I'm stamping it on. Now, if you wanted to do it on the edge of a journal page or something, you wouldn't really want something this wide. But what I do is I stamp them on paper, and then I doodle all over them, and then I cut them out. And then I just stick them in a little folder so that I have them. So when I want to do a border on a journal page, or if I want a border on a card, or I want something on a piece of mixed media, I've already got some done. And I can just look through my little folder and pull out what I want. I can sample them and see if I like it with what else is on the page or on the card or on my mixed media piece. So this one, definitely I would always just stamp on paper. And so we're going to do that, and then I'll show you what I do with it after I stamp it on the paper. So we've got that one now. Now the glue does have to dry for a little bit. It does slide back and forth until it dries. So we've got that on there. Now what we need to do is we need to put a handle on it. And so we're just going to take a piece of masking tape, any kind of tape that you have. I don't normally use washi tape because it doesn't stick forever. Washi tape is more of a release type tape. So I like masking tape the best just because of the size of it, and it seems to stick really well. So we're just going to put a handle on each end because they're long. Oh, and to make the handles, you just take a piece of tape, and it can be Scotch tape, it can be duct tape, it can be whatever you have, but you just take a piece of tape, and then you're just going to hold out a wing on each side. You've got a piece between your fingers and your thumb on each side, and then you're just going to make it meet in the middle, but keep those wings out there and press that middle together, and then just put the wings on the back of your stamp. And now you have 2 handles on your stamp that you can grab a hold of. And when you want to store these, they fold right down so that handle is not in your way, and you can stack them up on top of each other in a box or something like that. So another way that you can do it is you just cut a piece of your foam board, and then you cut bits of your foam to glue on top. Now, when I'm going to glue really small bits of my fun foam, the first thing I do is very lightly make marks on the top. And the reason I do that is because sometimes if I cut a long strip, and sometimes when you look at it, like this strip right here, is this the top of the strip? or is this the top of the strip? Because you need the same depth. So even though they look very much the same, I may have cut it a little wider than the depth of the fun foam. So if I put it on here this way one time and this way the next time, one's going to be taller than the other when you have it on your board. And I'll show you, this is what I'm talking about. See these? You can see all the little marks on there. Because this one has the marks on it also, here. So I know that every piece that has a mark on it, I know that that's the top, and I know that that's what needs to be flat on my stamp, no matter what kind of stamps you're making, if you're using little tiny pieces, so that I know all of these are the same depth. They're all the same width of fun foam. But if I were to put it like this, even though that didn't look different when I showed it to you, I showed you the back side and I showed you this side. It really didn't look much different. But if I were to put it on its side instead of on its back, it is just a little bit taller. If you can see right there, it's a little bit taller than this piece. So then when I went to stamp, that one would stamp, but this one wouldn't if it was right next to it, because this one would hold it off of my paper. So that's why I put that on there. So if I'm doing little tiny squares, little tiny, you know, like anything that's tiny, and mostly really strips, and because you need to know with a strip, you very easily could accidentally put it the wrong way. So I mark up my paper, and then I cut some strips, and I did this like a bit of a chevron, and then some straight, and then a bit of a chevron. And with this one, I did draw a line down the middle so that I could, because it was easier for me to make those little chevrons to know where to go. So that's another way that you can make your border stamps. Or like this one where we did not cut it, I made this one, and this one, I went ahead, and I like to do this shape right down the middle, just like this, and leave it plain, and then doodle on it afterwards. But I wanted to doodle on some ahead of time. And so this fits right in together, just like that. This one, I did cut it apart after I was done and put each piece on its own piece of foam board. Now this one I have cut using my razor knife just to get the fun foam close. I'm not going to get it exactly to the edge, or not the fun foam, the foam core. I'm not going to get it exactly next to this. That would be too hard to do, and I would nick up the edges of my stamp. But you do want to, if you leave it stick way out here, when you stamp it and put it on your paper, you very possibly could get paint or ink out here, and it's going to stamp on your paper, and you don't want that out there to mess it up. So especially if you're doing it directly to a journal instead of on a separate piece of paper. So all I do is I just take my X-Acto knife and very carefully, and I'm going to kind of turn it around because I have a bigger, no, I'm not. So, but very carefully, I just go ahead and I cut close to where that is. It doesn't have to be next to it. You don't want it next to it because you will cut into your stamp. And so be very careful. Don't let your knife slip. And I just go through like the top paper layer, and then I just go back and I go through a little bit more. And I just do that. Usually it takes about 3 or 4 times through to do it. But if you go through your paper layer first, it's a little bit easier to follow that. I'm going to just kind of continue going down here. And again, it doesn't have to be exactly next to your stamp. You might be closer in one spot than another. That's totally fine. So we will just continue to the edge, and then we'll have to go over it a few more times to make sure that we have finished it. I just want to be careful not to catch that last bit. Okay, so we've not come through at all, even at the start where we did it twice, so we're just going to keep going until we actually get it cut off. Now, you want to be careful not to like stick your nails into your fun foam or something, because they will make a dent, and that dent will show up. Any dent in your fun foam, so hold it flat and keep your hands way out of the way of your knife, or use a pair of scissors. I can't really cut the fun board very well with scissors. I could have like held this on here and drawn around it and then cut it out, that would probably be a better idea. So whenever you're using an X-Acto knife, you need to be very, very careful. Keep your hands out of the way. And let's see if this has done, this almost kind of feels pretty good. Still not quite, I'm starting to see it there, so it means I'm pretty much to the bottom paper. So I'm just going to carefully do it this way, and then I should, even if it's not cut all the way through, I should be able to see any place on the back. I think, oh no, that's foam. Okay, I thought I just nicked my stamp. So, because it is definitely something you want to be careful, especially if you've doodled your stamp and cut it the way you like it. If you're cutting it afterwards, you want to be really careful so that you don't ruin a stamp that you really like. Okay, so now see how we can see on the back where it's cut? So now I'm going to just turn it over to the back, and I'm going to cut the places that did not get cut yet. I'm just going to go in, and because now I can see exactly where I need to be. And I'm keeping it way up just towards the paper part because that's all that hasn't been cut, so that I don't go down and cut my foam, my fun foam part of my stamp. I'll just get this to the other end. So thank you to all of you that have sent me messages of concern because I was late. I do apologize. I really thought that I would have this one up on time. I knew I couldn't do last Thursdays because of everything that I had to get ready. And I do have some other things that are taking my time at this time. And, you know, we all have things sometimes where we have to put aside what we want to do to put aside what well, I don't even know how to say that because I want to do the other things I'm doing too. Well, I wish that I wasn't having to, but so there we go. There is that stamp. So now we have, let's put that over there. And you actually could put another piece of fun foam on here and then cut the fun foam that shape if you wanted to, or use that for something else. So, and I've seen people try and use this for a stamp, but the thing is that it's got paper on it, then foam, then paper. This is styrofoam. But the paper gets wet and wrinkly and, you know, it doesn't work well. You need the fun foam on top of it, even though it's foam and foam. They're different types and they do different things. So let's cover this up now. Whoops, took the end off. Oh well, we'll mess with that later. So now we have this one. And so I had just done this, and then I drew this design. And then this one just kind of looks a little like waves. And we have our double stamp that we can doodle with. And we have it where we have just placed separate pieces of fun foam on there for a stamp. And then I have this one that I did, which was just a wave with some circles on it, but this one was only done at 3/4 of an inch. So now we're going to see how those work. And so in order to use them, this is a nice, you know, you can have, I do have some large stamp pads, but even with those, they're not long enough to do a border stamp. So that is where your own paint palette comes in very nice and handy because it is long enough. Let's see which one is the longest out of these. You know, it's long enough to do the whole thing. And even if you have to move it up and down a little bit, because I'm going to put different colors on it. So if I want a solid color stamp, I will only stamp it on the color I want. But it still works really nicely. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to do about 1 inch. And this one will wind up being different colors. I'm going to do about 1 inch of 2 different colors 3 times so that I have a variety of, you can do it all in one color, and you don't want to put on too much. That's why you get your pad wet first, so that your pad doesn't just soak up your paint. And then you get it wet and you squeeze it out so it's barely damp. But that way it's not going to soak up your paint. Your paint is going to kind of work in a little bit, but not soak in too much. So I'm going to kind of go I want to see about where is halfway. Should have figured that out beforehand. So halfway is right about here because I want to go to about halfway. So I'm going to go right to about there. And then I'm going to do a green. Maybe not. Maybe I'll do this blue at the end of that one because they're kind of closer to the same color. Whoops. So just a line of, and you can use these over and over. And then I'm going to come over a little bit. And if you're using them but you get drawn away for something, you can cover it with your plastic and it will last for a while because you've got the wetness in the sponge to help it from getting all dried out. So, and you just want to wash it. You don't want to just leave it set and let it dry out, because once the acrylic paint completely dries, then you won't get it off your pad. Although you could probably turn it over and use the other side. I don't know, I've never done that because I always wash it when I'm done. I do set it aside sometimes and maybe go back in whoops. Okay. I think it's just going to be that kind of day, so just deal. There we go. All right. And I should have brought some wet paper towels here. So then just use something to just spread your colors out and kind of work the paint into your paint palette. And, you know, you don't want it like really globby on top. You want it pretty smooth, just like an ink pad would be. You know, an ink pad doesn't have a whole bunch of ink just, you know, sitting on the top there. And because you don't want it to get up into your stamp. And then if you find that you've put it down and there just doesn't seem to be enough, because sometimes I do that, like this green one doesn't look like enough, I'm going to start right now and give it a little more. But sometimes I'll think that looks good, and then I go to do it and there's just not enough. So then just put a little bit more on there and work it in. And you don't need to cover, you only need to cover whatever it is you're going to be working with. So, you know, if you're using small stamps and they're all just this big and you're only going to use one color, then you just want to make your palette just that big and leave the rest of it the way it is. Definitely need a little more yellow there. And I'm doing this very mixed media, kind of mixed media-ish. So I'm not super worried about whether my paints are a little mixing or if they're thicker in one spot than another. Sometimes, depending on what I'm doing, I will take more time doing this to get it all out there where I want it. But, you know, because of the time of the videos and not being able to upload them easily after about 45 minutes, and sometimes if I get to an hour, then I can't upload it at all and I have to redo the video. So, you know, I do things a little faster here than what you can do at home. You can always take your time. Okay, now we're just going to set this over here and put our stamps over there and grab some paper. So this is a long one. Oh, the other thing is that sometimes when you glue them and then you let them set to dry, it does make this get a little bit bowed. I had one. This one. I think you can see it here. It's a little bit bowed. So I just go ahead and I just kind of break it back a little bit. like that. But even if it's bowed, you just put it on your paper and you press the whole thing, it's going to go down. It's not going to make that big of a difference. But if that happens to you, you can kind of straighten it out a bit. This one does not have handles on it because it wasn't cut off yet, so it needs its own handles. And again, the same thing with your handles as with having extra foam board. You don't want extra with your handles. So after you get your handles on there, just fold them down and then just go in and cut off the excess so that it doesn't get in your paint and then get on your paper. There, like that. Okay, so now I do have this soft padded so I'm just going to do this so it'll be half and half. Give it a look to see how it looks. Okay, I need a little bit down here, maybe a little bit more on this side of the red. And there we go. I still didn't get any there. And then just put it along the edge of your paper and give it a stamp. That's very crooked. And there we go. There is that stamp. Now let's see how our stamp off would be. See if there's enough paint on there to get another one or not. Give it a second to get on the paper. While we're doing that, I'll fold that plastic. And it's just, I set this on a plastic bag so the paint doesn't go through onto whatever surface you're on. Okay, so let's take that off of there. So there we go. And there's a much lighter stamp off. And then normally I would have a wet paper towel and I would just give it a wipe. So, and the one thing that I don't like here is I got a big blob of red in the center here. If you keep doing that, what will happen is eventually that acrylic paint is going to dry and it will build up in your stamp, and then all of a sudden you won't have this line anymore because it will be full of paint. So if you have a big blob like that, you can just go ahead and try and wipe it out of there without, you don't want to mess up your lines or whatever. And I have one of these circles here too is full of paint. And that's why you want to make sure you smooth it down nicely. So that looks pretty good. All right, so let's do the wavy one in the blues. And like I said, you can, and this pad that we bought was much bigger than this. I have 3 pieces, I think, this size. So, you can do your palette as big as you want to. So we need some right in here. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. So we're just going to take that and put it on here just like that. Now these, because you've got your design in them already, you don't have to do anything else to them, but you can doodle on them if you want to. And I could flip this one around so that they kind of fit together. This was not made to fit together exactly. So, it would not fit perfectly. There are those, and I like the way that looks too. Even the light one. This one I might leave exactly as it is when I use it. And this one I may doodle on because it's so light. And then just give it a wipe. And then we'll do the other colors with this one. Let's see what it looks like. See, and these are all the full length of my paper. So if I am doing it to put on some kind of a project that is 11.5 inches long, I will have a border that's that long. And if I don't want it that long, I can always cut it shorter. I think that looks pretty good. And this one I'm going to do this way because this was actually, these were fit together originally. So I'm going to see how well they look if I kind of fit them together. I'm crooked again. I'm always crooked. I cut crooked. I stamp crooked. And there we go. Oh, I really like that one. But see how those fit together? I was crooked. This was way down. I could see the paper there. Here I couldn't see any paper, and here it lines up very nicely. So had I had that straight, those two would have actually fit together if I wanted to do that for some reason. And then because we have a straight back, we could do them back to back also. And then we have the one where we have cut the pieces of fun foam. We're just going to grab some paint this way. So that looks pretty cool. And now this one is made, I believe, maybe not. I think that this one is the length of a piece of paper. So a lot of times when I do my journals, most of the time when I do a journal, I normally take an 8.5 by 11 and fold it in half. And a lot of times that's the size of my page. So then having an 8.5 inch stamp like this works great because it goes from one end right to the other. You don't have a bunch extra, and it's long enough to do that with. So let's just see what our stamp off looks like. That one's very late, and I did let it set too. So then we'll get one of the last ones also, so I can show you what I do with those. And I think I'm going to do it. I love the way that those colors are on that stamp, so I'm going to do this one the same way. Oh, I really like that. And that's a bit wide, but actually that might make a nice pocket, especially in a smaller journal or on a shorter page where you wanted to put a pocket at the bottom, or even if you wanted to put a side pocket, then it might be nice to use the whole thing. So there we go. And so those are what they wind up looking like. And then I like to cut them apart. Now, some people would maybe want to keep them together because they're maybe easier to store, because they're just on one sheet of paper. But I have a hard time seeing what something's going to look like if I can't put it right on whatever page I'm using it on. So I could cut it off later, but I prefer to just pull out the ephemera and just try it on there and say, yep, I like it, or no, I don't, instead of kind of holding it up there going, this might be good, I'll cut it out now, and then I'll see if I like it or not. And then I don't like it, so then I have to try and hold up another one and see if I like that one. I prefer to just have them ready to go. And so next week, I'll show you how to corral your bits like this. So there we go. And you can just use them for so many things. They don't have to just be used for a border. But so you cut them out, and then you have your borders. And with these ones, because you've got the double there, now you have 2 borders, or like I said, or 1 pocket. Where's my pen? But then what I like to do is I like to just go in, and maybe because this is straight lines, I had a ruler here. So maybe I would say, okay, I want to draw a line across the bottom. I'm going to put something underneath it because that is so soft. And then I say, okay, so there's 1, but maybe I want 2 lines there. And so literally it's just a matter of just going in and doodling, which is a really nice thing to do when you don't know what to do. And I've got a problem with going off the edges of the folder there, and so, so I've got that, and then maybe just put these in like that, real messy. And maybe a little swirly in there. And like I said, this is something that, you'll take. It's very enjoyable to just sit and do these kinds of things. Just when you just want to relax, you just want to get your mind off things. And so you can just sit and think, what do I want to do next? What do I want to put on here? And if you mess them up, it's a little piece of paper. It's your own homemade stamp. It's not hurting a thing if you mess it up. You just start over. And the other thing is, if you make a few things that you like, you think, oh, I love that. You can always, if you have a copy machine, you can just put them in your copy machine and copy them. It's your work. You can do with it whatever you want to do with it. So, I don't do that a lot because I enjoy the process of making them over and over, and I don't like things to look the same necessarily. But maybe you're doing some kind of a project where you really do want it to. I'm trying to figure out how I want to hold this. Where you do kind of want it to look the same. You want something kind of the same on each page or whatever. Then just go ahead and copy it. And if you copy it and then you want it to look a little different, you just doodle on it a little more. And now it doesn't look exactly the same anymore. Or like the one down there for the pocket, I really love the coloring on that one. So that might be one that I would want to, before I doodled, go ahead and copy it. And then I would have that coloring on any one I wanted to work on because it's so pretty. And if your papers curl, you just go ahead and curl them the other way. And if it's a very large piece of paper, just hold it on the edge of your table and then pull it over the edge of your table the way that I just pulled it over the edge of my finger, and that will straighten it out for you. But see, in this one, obviously, it needs a lot more, and just the plain old black pen is not real impressive. But we got that one and this one. Out of the one stamp, we wound up with 2 borders, or a pocket. But I really like the way that these work. And there's lots of times where you just might want to put a border on something. I like to stencil borders a lot of times, mostly just because I forget about border stamps. I have some like clear border stamps. I have border stamps that I've made myself, and I just kind of forget about them. And so it's time to remember to do some stamping, and you don't need stamp pads to do it. You make your own paint pad, and when you're done, you just go ahead and rinse it off. And we did get a bucket to rinse them in. We got a bucket to dye our paper. And because this has red and blue in it, possibly the color of my water is going to be brown. But most of the time when I wash them off, I take that water and I take some of my copy paper and I dip it in the water and then set it on some plastic somewhere to dry. And then I have my own colored painty paper from washing off my pad. And I didn't even, and see, look at how that looks. Doesn't that look nice? You've got a card or something, you stamp this on the edge, and then you cut the edge of the card, and it looks like that on the edge of the card. Isn't that really, really quite neat? So there's just so many things, you know, you just like play around with things, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I forgot I could do this, or oh, I never thought about doing that. So this one, even if I had stamped it closer, but it didn't have to be stamped closer. Yes, it's off a little bit here and not here. Maybe it was supposed to be that way. Who knows, you know? So a lot of times we see our mistakes and think, oh, that's terrible. 90% of the time, no one else would know it's a mistake. Only you know it's a mistake, and it's only because you knew what you were trying to do, and that's not how it turned out. But a lot of times if you look at it, you'll find out that some of your mistakes look a whole lot better than what you even had planned. Not that what you had planned was bad, but your mistake wound up being better. So, I'm just going to cut this last one out so that I have them all cut out. And so we can just kind of look at them all. And then again, we have these pieces here that don't have any pattern to them, but we could stamp those. Let's get all of our extras out of the way. But I just think that these really work very well. Probably I've said that for the millionth time now. My brain's not working quite the way that it could. So, and again, like I said, you know, this one would look nice with some marker on it. And that type of thing. I don't like the way this one's curling up, so let's uncurl it. There we go. And let's just see what this looks like. I really don't want to stick my hands in the paint right now, so I'm just going to kind of do this. That's even cool all on its own. So look at that, the extra paper, it's another border strip. Let's finish this one up. And because this has texture, it kind of puts that little bit of texture on there. Put a little red up here. There. And then, because you've got this little bit of texture, it's kind of like little squares, you can doodle around those little squares. So it's always nice to have those around just to give yourself something to do when you think I want to do something, but I don't know what I want to do. Have your little border stamps there. This one I like it is. This one I think I will need to doodle on. I'll doodle on this one because it's too light. I will probably cut those apart. Maybe I'll leave them together, but just doodle on one side. And then obviously your painty ones, you can doodle those any way that you want to. And you can have them in different sizes, 8.5 by 11 to fit a journal, and the side of a regular copy paper, or you could do the 11 inches, and then it would do the full length of a copy paper. But I think that those turned out pretty. I really like the way they looked. And again, like I said, you can take your, because maybe I'm going to do a few more, so you can just take your pad and just fold your bag over top of it and make sure that you pat it down well, so kind of pat the edges down. Keep it, covered up a little bit, and then I'll come back in a little while and I'll make some more because I want a few more, and I'll do these in different colors. So that is today's project. For next week, we need some file folders and some paper tape. So, and if you don't have the paper tape, your masking tape will be fine. So I want to make some washi tape with the paper tape because it's more see-through than, the masking tape is not see-through at all. And I like the see-through paper tape. So we're going to need some paper tape and some file folders. So that is $2.50 for next week. We had $76.25 in our bank. We just saved another $5. So we now have $81.25 in our bank. So it does just go to show you don't have to spend a whole lot of money to craft. We spend $7.50 a week, but over the course of these 41 weeks, we've saved up over $80 that we haven't used yet. And, so when we want something big, the money will be there for us to get it. So thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. I apologize for if the lighting's bad or if I was just a little off today. But thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate you. And I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.